going on with the veterans because like we got something going on with
No, you're fine. Keep talking.
okay, okay, well, we're doing good because the thing is, our veterans, like I said, Renee, we love our veterans, and I can remember when you told me at one point that you would never date a veteran,
That's right.
and then what happened?
Uh,
You end up marrying not only a veteran, but a Vietnam veteran. Yeah.
yes. Okay. And it's from my life experiences that, my father, he was World War II. And the damage that was done to our World War II veterans was severe because there was, particularly if you were a black veteran, who served in World War II, maybe even World War One, there was no support system when they came out, and a lot of times their feelings that they were going through and their emotions was taking out on their loved ones in the family, who they had to act out on. But I'm going to ask your listening audience, Calvin, for you to repeat your numbers. I do have some numbers here for suicide and crisis lifeline to give out. So I'm asking that make sure they have a pen and pencil, a paper and pen ready to take this valuable information down. And maybe it's not for you, but it's for a loved one. You want to make sure that anytime someone says to you, "I feel like taking my life," take them serious. Don't
Yes.
say, "Okay, I'll go ahead. You're just playing. Like you don't want to do that." You know, they have their reason for giving you this information, and it's not to scare you, but it's them crying out for help.
And
And
Renee, and that is so important. And again, if someone wanted to be part of the conversation, Renee, then give us a call at 252-756-2008. Give us a call, you be part of the conversation, especially our veterans out there. And the thing is, since we're talking about coping with suicide and loss, many people know someone who died by suicide. Coping with death is hard. It can be especially hard when a loss is untimely or traumatic. You know, results, you know, that's something that is terrible when things like that happen, but it happens, And resource for coping with loss, well, while grieving, it's normal to experience intense and distressing thoughts and emotions such as denial, anger, sadness, loneliness. You may also struggle to understand why that person took their own life or worry that you missed a warning sign. And this is what we're talking about, paying attention. Because if you got someone, for instance, I use it like drinking, for instance. They never drank, and all of a sudden they start drinking and drinking a lot. Well, that's a sign that you need to look into. Things just like that. And remember, who loses someone to suicide can develop post-traumatic stress disorder themselves. Symptoms include feeling stressed or frightened long after you've experienced a traumatic event. And you may have suicidal thoughts yourself.
yeah, well, I mean, I think that being active in a war, doing your assignment, and this is something that is coming up right now, is that I mean, okay, maybe I won't go into that, but when you are given an order, okay, when you are trained, and most military, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Calvin, they're trained to kill.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, so you go in and you take somebody's life, and then you now, after maybe you leave the service or you stay in there for so many years, you now have feelings. And those feelings are something that now you can't manage because you took somebody's life. You don't know if this person was a father, a mother, a child, they had children. So now you have their loss that you've taken on. But as I was saying, Calvin, I have some information that they can text. Like some people are texters, and they can text to 741-741 to reach a trained crisis counselor. Through Crisis Text Line, it's global non-for-profit. It's an organization that is available there for veterans if they feel if like they want to kill themselves, and it's a 24/7. But as I was saying also, Calvin, you got to take it when somebody, if even if a person has not been able to express that they want to take their own lives, they want to commit suicide. However, if you are in tune, okay, to people and how they are acting, then you can tell that a person emotionally is unstable. They are saddened and just act depressed. And you can sometimes maybe talk to people and just in having a general open conversation, you can find out exactly emotionally how a person is feeling.
And that is so right, Renee. And the thing is, the VA Suicide Prevention Program team members are available to connect you with others who can help you in healing after a suicide. And that is so important because find suicide prevention coordinators at the VA medical centers across the country. And you can do that. And I'm going to give out some information where you can, it's Veterans Crisis Line .net, / get help, local resources. These are the things that we give out here to help our veterans because it is so important. And a lot of times the veteran themselves might not even realize what they're going through. This is why it's so important that the loved one, the spouse or whomever is with them on a regular basis can see the change in them. And the Suicide Awareness Voice of Education website has information on how to find a therapist in your community who specialize in working with people, who have lost someone to suicide. Again, that is information that we want to give out because it's so important that the survivor that is here, they're the ones now that feel so bad sometimes they feel like committing suicide themselves, Renee. And that's why it's so important to talk to someone, find a therapist, find someone a professional person that you can talk to.
And if all fails, okay, can I say this, Calvin? If all fails, you don't have access to these numbers, you don't know where they are, but then you're having these feelings, call 911.
Exactly. That's
if
right.
if all you can't find these numbers and you are feeling and you're at that point, call 911.
That's right.
They will get you some assistance. And again, these feelings to me of suicide could be based on life experiences. That I went in, I served, I was an active war person. There are so many wars that this America has participated. World War One, Two, Korean War,
Right.
Vietnam War, okay,
Afghanistan.
Iraq, Afghanistan. And a lot of times, the people who pull us into these wars, they never serve.
Exactly.
Like we have Trump now looking to start wars all over the place, going into countries, even into our local states, bringing military into our local states, and that's intimidating enough. And what they're doing, you can't tell me that when these people take people off the streets. They take children, they take women, they take men, and they throw them into these detention centers. And some of these people who they're putting in, they're actually U.S. citizens, okay, who actually served in the military. And now they're being treated like
Well,
this.
you just remind me of something, Renee. There was I don't call him a young man, but he was in his 80s, and he had two sons in the military. And these ICE people picked him up, and he was a citizen, and started beating him up like he was a 20-year-old person. These are the things that is going on right now, But, like I said, this suicide that we're talking about today among veterans, it is so important that we do something about that. And again, you listen to Awesome Radio, WECU 1570 AM, 107.5 FM, and WNOS 1450 AM and 102.3 FM out of New Bern, and WYLTLP 100.3 FM, that's out of Rocky Mount, and WBISLP 106.9 FM Espanol. Again, that's out of Winterville. We are expanding here in Greenville, North Carolina, and right here at Awesome Radio. We are expanding big time.
And we're here with Veterans Care Matter. And if you have a concern, and maybe you might want us to repeat the numbers, please feel free to give us a call at 252-756-2008. We would love for you to join the conversation because perhaps maybe you experienced firsthand someone who felt like committing suicide or someone who committed suicide, and you can offer some information, okay, of how you overcame wanting to commit suicide. Perhaps you went and got some help,
Yes.
psychological help, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no bad feelings if that's what you needed to get yourself over this hump. And perhaps as a family member, you seek support after you lost someone to suicide because it's not easy. This person every day is in your life, and sometimes you feel like, how can I help them? You see that they're struggling, so how can I help them? And you don't have an avenue. So these same numbers are numbers that you can use to get support for yourself so that you can direct your loved ones to get the help they need.
And that's so right, Renee. And not only that, Renee, but sometimes, people attempt suicide, but they don't make it all the way. So, and if someone you love attempts suicide, you may feel, strange. You may have different emotions about that, such as fear, anger, or confusion. And you, believe it or not, you're not alone. These are steps you can take take and resources available to guide you through this journey of hope and healing, and there's things you can do because again, you need to get in touch with the VA administration. And I know it's could be a little difficult since this administration have laid off so many veterans, that work for the VA, or the VA themselves have lost a lot of employees. Well, you still need to go to the VA. I tell everybody all the time because the VA has actually changed a lot from when I started going to the VA. I remember when I started going to the VA, Renee, I didn't like going, but I had to go. And the thing is, people that was working for the VA during that time was acting as if they were doing me a favor when I went there, where I went there because I needed help. And now I have to say that the VA has changed. Their attitude with veterans have changed a lot. I would say 98%, is for the better. There's always 2% there for change. I'm not going to say they don't need change. They always need some change to make things better for our veterans. But there has been a great change with the VA. That I have to put that out there because I know it. I've seen it. I've been dealing with the VA for probably over 50 years. So I know what I'm talking about when I say I've seen change with the VA. I've seen change, little things with the VA, such as when an individual go and get car fare for themselves. Well, I can remember when that took months and months and months to do. But it still takes some time now if you don't do it the right way. And make sure when you get for car fare that you get the proper form. Little things like that because they have old forms and they have new forms. And if you're doing the car fare, make sure you get the new form and put it into the right person's hands because that makes a big difference as to where you get it in a couple of weeks or maybe 6 months down the road. That makes a big difference. So again, little things like that makes a difference to a veteran when they do that. And phone calls. Now you can get your medicine by just making a phone call through the VA. That wasn't always there. When you think about it, it wasn't, you had to always go in, to see your doctor, your primary physician, or the PA to get your medicine. Now you can make a phone call and get your medicine. That makes a big difference, especially when individuals are getting their medicine that they need to stay alive, or you have heart medicine, or you have high blood medicine, or you have medicine that keep you out of stress from being so stressful. Well, you need that medicine, and you can get it by just making a phone call to the VA.
So, Calvin, I know that there are a lot of homeless veterans. Is there any outreach programs that reach out to veterans who are homeless? Because to me, if I'm homeless, I won't say I want to commit suicide, but I would be very saddened and I would want to know that there's a place that I can go to get some help. So what happens with the homeless veterans? That's what I'm asking.
Well, okay, I'm glad you brought that up, Renee, because I know a little bit about it. Okay, veterans, the VA right here in Greenville, right? They have individuals that go out looking for homeless people. Right here in Greenville, North Carolina, they have people that go out looking for homeless people, and they set them up, in apartments. So these are the things that you need to know. But again, if you don't make yourself available, okay, then no one will be able to help you. This is why I say the VA have changed so much, because there was a time where, again, my opinion, the VA didn't care whether you were homeless or not, or living under a bridge. They didn't care. But today they do, because there are special people that's assigned to go out and look for homeless veterans and try to get them into a shelter or someplace to live. And I know that because I've seen it firsthand. That's why I can speak on it, because it helps when a veteran can now get into a shelter or an apartment. I won't say a home, but an apartment. And the VA have money where they can help them with rent. They help them with different things, this household goods, little things like that. The VA will help them get that, But again, you have to be available when the VA go out there and find you, or you can go to the VA right there on Moy, 401 Moy Street, right here in Greenville. You can go there and let them know. There's people right there that can help our homeless veterans, Renee.
Okay, and then, another question I have. I was wounded in war. Okay, I got shot or I lost a limb and I applied for benefits. And right now, based on the amount of care that I need, I don't have enough financial help. So I feel like I want to kill myself. So how does a veteran get the benefits that they need in order to sustain themselves based on the injury that they incurred during war?
Good question. Well, this is the thing. What veterans have to do is first go to the VA. It doesn't matter what state you're in. There's a VA administration there. There's a VA hospital there. There's a VA clinic there. You have to go there and sign up, okay? Because if you don't sign up, then the VA is not going to know that you exist. So you got to go there and sign up and put your name in. You can always try to see someone to help you get benefits from the VA. And once you get benefits from the VA, you're pretty much set because you can get your medicine, you get different things. Excuse me. You get different things from the VA that will help you. And this is what I say this here, you can also go to, like for instance, the DAV. The DAV is an organization
What
for
does that stand for?
Disabled American Veterans. They will go and help you get benefits that you deserve. See, I always say that if you was in the military and you don't have to have physical wounds, you can have mental wounds. See, a lot of times we don't actually see the wounds. People look at you and think you're doing fine, but you got hit with Agent Orange in Vietnam, and that affects your liver, that affects your heart, that affects your lungs, affects so many parts of your body, and you walking around here looking dressed nice, and people think you're doing fine, where on the inside, you're breaking down. You see, so this is why it's so important that you have to go to the VA. I'll tell anybody, like I've talked to people, they say, well, I don't need the VA, I'm doing okay. But I say this here, if you went to war, no one comes back the same as when they went in. I don't care who you are. That's just a fact of life. No one comes back the same because that's the way it is. When you go to the military train you, they break you down and build you back up, to become a soldier. And this is why I say that you need to go to the VA and apply for help. When you apply for help, that means that you might get financial help, or you might get medicine. There's so many things that you can get. If you had a head wound while you was in the VA, in the military, right, you can get free dental, excuse me. But these are the things that happen to our veterans. So again, I implore all our veterans, if you have not gone to the VA, go to the VA. There's someone right there that can help you get your benefits. Benefits is so important today because as we get older in life, we're going to need medicine. You know, you might get high blood pressure. You might get anything can happen to you health wise. And the VA is there to help our veterans. Not only help our veterans, but believe it or not, the VA, can also help the spouse. A lot of people might not realize that, Renee, but if a veteran is homebound and cannot take care of themselves, the VA will pay for their spouse or someone to come in and take care of that individual veteran. These are the things that people might not be aware of that we let you know right here on Veteran Care Matters because it's so important that we let you know about that because I say this here, Veteran Care Matters. And that's why we named the show Veteran Care Matters because we care about our veterans.
Okay. Anyone wanting to join the conversation? 252-756-2008. If you need for us to repeat any of these hotline numbers, crisis numbers for veteran suicide, please call us, and we're going to say them again throughout the show. This again, Calvin, is tis the season, and tis the season to be jolly. All right, no matter what kind of holiday you're celebrating or not celebrating, but you're around people who are joyous, or you could be around people who are sad. But I do know that how I'm feeling when the day comes, how I'm feeling about myself, I can be joyous, I could be gay, I could be happy. However, I'm also very conscious and aware of my surroundings and the people who are around me. And it's important, okay, that we as adults, we've been through so much, and we're now, like really, well, we're grandparents. And you earn your rights as grandparents to educate your children as to the importance of this season. This season that they have coming up on Thursday is called Thanksgiving. I'm calling it Family Day, Happy Family Day. And Thanksgiving, people gather, okay? And there will be people who will be gathering and children, and it's only one day out of 365. And that one day it'll come in there and it will go. But however, how you take that day on can have a direct impact on your mental health.
And you're right, Renee. And there's I won't call it new, but there's a PACT Act and your VA benefits. This is something that a lot of people, when I say people now, I'm talking about veterans, might not be aware of. The PACT Act is a law that expands VA health care and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic substances. This law helps us provide generations of veterans and their survivors with the care and benefits they've earned and deserve. So again, this is so important because did you hear? I got to go back a little bit because it says here that this law helps us provide generation of veterans and their survivors. See, that's the key right there. They're survivors. That means they're children. That's what that means, And with the care and benefits they've earned and deserve. And that's why I was saying before, anybody that went to war, especially if they had to deal with burn pits, Agent Orange and other toxic substances, well, they deserve everything that the VA should be able to give them. And starting March the 5th, 2024, we're expanding VA health care to millions of veterans years earlier than called for by the PACT Act. So this is something that, a lot of veterans, I'm sure, wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware about it until I started talking about different things and talking to the VA administration.
All right, so this is Awesome Radio, and we're here today with Veterans Care Matters and WECU 1570 AM, 107.5 FM, and we're out of Winterville, Greenville, and WNOS 1450 AM, 102.3 FM, and that's our new partners here in New Bern, and we're hoping New Bern is enjoying our show.
Yes, and WYLT 100.3 FM out of Rocky Mount, and WBISLP 106.9 FM Espanol. That's again out of Winterville, North Carolina.
And don't change that. Please don't change it out. This is our break, and we're up for our last segment of our show. And again, Veterans Care Matters. Okay, we're here every fourth Monday at 2 o'clock.
That's right.
Okay, so
And you're doing a great job, Renee. I have to, I have to keep you, honey, but you're doing a great job.
you're already looking for my replacement
Okay,
role. Okay,
okay.
so we'll get through. We'll get through today.
Okay. You can also call 800-698-2411. If you want to look into the disability or related disability compensation or apply for a VA health care, you can always do that. That number again is 800-698-2411.
Okay, and this is for applying for the PAC Act that now has new benefit expansion for people who were in burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic substances. And again, those substances that you have been exposed to, they debilitate the body. We know that President Biden, his son, who
Yes.
died, he died from being in burn pits, and
Yes.
he ended up with cancer. So that we don't know if your family member was active in war and they're suffering from like cancer, heart issues, health issues, then you could be eligible for these benefits and the programs. And all you have to do is make sure your loved ones or your family or anyone that you're in touch with, you give them the conversation to say, well, maybe you can get some benefits since you actually actively served in a war.
And Rita, and that's right. And the thing is, you can also file for disability compensation online, and the form, I'm gonna give that form number out. Then I'm gonna give it out twice so that you can make sure you get it. It's VA form 21-526E as in Edward, Z as in zebra. And again, 21-526EZ. And that's a form that you can fill out online to apply for a disability.
Okay, and then also this shows here, Calvin, on your form here, that you can log into .gov. So the word is capital LOGIN, login.gov, or you can ID.me and create an account and be able to have access to your information, which will help for you when you want
Right.
to apply for benefits.
And that's so important because when you apply for benefits, you want to keep up with everything that you do. Because, of course, when you apply, you're going to have to go see doctors, at the VA. And that makes a difference too, because when you go there, you know what you have to do. You know how you have to see these doctors. Because, again, a lot of times these doctors, they will say one thing, but then I always say this here. If you go see the doctor, a lot of times they are for the VA, okay? So you might want to get a outside doctor to look into your disability. That's all I'm gonna say on that,
All righty, so Calvin, again, your show today, the theme is suicide prevention. And we're hoping that the information that we're giving out, because there's a lot of reasons why, or surrounding why someone might want to kill themselves. And so this information that we're giving out, it could be, you have a chronic illness, okay, and you had enough of this chronic illness. You don't want to keep having to go to the doctor and not get a cure, or go to the doctor and get a new remedy for the cure of this chronic illness that you have. So again, sometimes we have to do our homework, we have to do our research, and also keep trying till you get, and the way that you don't want to try is to do suicide. ending your life, sure, you might not have to worry about the pain or the chronic illness that you're going through. But again, you're going to be leaving behind people who love and care for you, and and you don't want to do that.
I have to agree with you. You don't want to do that. And they always say, sometimes you end up in the hospital because of your suicide attempt. And that's when, you talk to your loved ones and the medical staff about completing a release of information form, which will allow you to participate in your loved one medical and mental health care on their journey of wellness, of getting better, and ask to meet with the treatment team prior to discharge from the hospital. See, these are the things that we all have to look at the long term, because once an individual have attempted suicide, that doesn't mean they won't try it again. And the treatment team consists of medical professionals and staff involved in the patient's care. They provide care at the facility and develop a plan for the patient to receive follow-up care after discharge. And that's the important part. It's so important to have that follow-up care after they leave the hospital, because it makes such a big difference. And, you bring a list of medication taken by the patient when they meet, in the treatment room. These are all the things that, we need to know, Renee, especially when someone have attempted suicide and now they want to know where can they go home. Well, once they get home, it's so important that we have that aftercare, and we have the professionals that's going to take care of them after they get home as well. Because you also ask what mental health and physical conditions, if any, are present and being treated, and what medications are being prescribed. See, these are the things that we need to know, because talk about safe storage or removal of guns, certain medicines, from the home. Hospital staff can assist with obtaining, safe storage items such as gun locks and medication dispensers or pill boxes. These are the things that we want to be aware, because so many veterans have guns, and that's most of the way that they commit suicide is with guns. So you want to make sure that that is taken care of by removing them from the house or getting gun locks, And if receiving service at the VA, ask how to connect with the VA Suicide Prevention Coordinator. Again, it's a social worker, psychologist, or nurse who has the responsibility to provide resources to those at risk. It's so important that we look into this, because you just don't want to get them to go out of the hospital and now they're home and then a month later they commit suicide. We don't want that. We want them to live a normal life. And in order to do that, they have to have the professional help from the VA that the VA will supply to them
And for them.
and for them. And then, that's the thing.
And we do give out those numbers again.
Okay, well, I'm going to give out some numbers. It's suicide. If you're thinking of suicide, well, it's 800-273-8255. And there's a hotline number, it's 988. And when you dial that, then you got to press 1 for veterans. And then if that all fail, then you dial 911.
Okay, and then you also have a chat online, or you can text this number and you can actually speak to someone right then and there. And it's a 24/7, and the number is 838-255.
Yes.
838-255. And again, you don't have to end your life this way. I mean, all that you're going through, it's you're being prepared, not to die, but to live a better life.
And that's the key, because we want our veterans to live a long, healthy life. Not worrying about suicide, because it affects the family. It affects the family just as much, if not more, because now the wife or the husband, they're concerned every day. But if I go to work and come back home, will that individual have committed suicide? That's a stress. That's a very stressful thing on a spouse or loved one, to have to put up with every day. So that's why we say we need the help that the VA offers. And now the thing is, once you get in a home and getting well, well, you got to know warning signs of suicide. Keep the safety plans handy and discuss it often as needed. Remain connected and communicate often with your loved one about any swift change in mood. Reach out to medical providers such as, and you should have concerns about this here. Find out about other VA programs such as peer support, whole health, case management, and VA chaplains. The VA have a lot of chaplains from all nationalities, so all different religions that they can help an individual, and I always say use the chaplains at the VA, use the priests at the VA, use the pastors at the VA. These are the individuals that you need to talk to, especially this time of year, when Christmas is coming around, holidays are here, but then we need to be aware of what is going on in our home. That is so important. I cannot tell you how important it is, when we want to say, well, is everything all right? How do you feel today? And they say they feel fine, but they're acting different than what they're saying. So that makes a difference. This is why it's so important that we keep in touch with our medical team. They released us from the hospital. Our medical team is there to support you throughout. So it's important, once you get home and say, well, all is well. All is not well. It's never well because they are constantly thinking about, well, can I commit suicide? Going across a bridge, and thinking about, well, can I run off the bridge? Things of that nature, we have to be aware of how our loved ones are thinking and just help them along the way. And in order to help them, they need professional help, not the wife or the husband. I mean, that's good to be there for support, but you need that medical help to get them through the day and the time.
Okay. And Calvin, I'm thinking of, and I don't know if you can expand or just say, no, I don't want to talk about that. But I'm thinking about the climate right now in this country, where if you are a black or brown person and you come out your door and then all of a sudden you see ICE standing there and they snatch you up, they snatch your wife up, they snatch your children up, or just individually or collectively, that's stress. That this country now has put us into a tremendous amount of stress, and though you're afraid to leave your house, and so you stay in your house, but you don't have everything that you need. Again, this is stress. This country has done undue stress on us, and not to say, I don't know if this is suicidal related, but I do know that there's enough stress out there for people that they're afraid to leave their house. Children are not going to school, and they have these people that look like Ku Klux Klan, but they're not wearing a white hood. They're wearing their face covered, and they're approaching people and taking them and not even nicely saying, okay, could you come with me? They're throwing them down. They're doing all kind of horrible stuff to people.
Well, you brought up a good point, Renee, because like I said before, I mentioned it before where, this father had two sons that was in the military, in the Marines, matter of fact, and they beat him up, and then you have veterans, that are married to, Americans. I put it like they're married to Americans, and they might have been from a different country, and then they joined the military, and yet this ICE is coming around picking up people. It doesn't matter whether they was a veteran. Doesn't matter if they look brown and black. They're picking them up, and so it's so important because of that. Because again, you have a veteran that is already suffering from PTSD, and then this stuff happens to them, or happens to their spouse. Well, they lose everything, and what do they have left? They have nothing left. So they might think of committing suicide, or they go to a prison, and then they find out that, this individual, not only is he American, but he was in the service.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and so this is all way that this country now is attacking and messing with our veterans. Like I said before, Renee, veterans, freedom is not free. Let me put that out there. Freedom is not free. And the reason that I say that is because we have military people throughout the globe, throughout the world, protecting this country. And without them, I don't know where we would be. If you look, you go back to World War II. If you know your history a little bit. I don't know much about history, but I know a little bit. Right here in the borders of South Carolina, Russia had a submarine there. Look at that. See, this is the thing that you have to look at and think about. Because we just need to know what is going on. And right now, a lot of things is going on in this country, with our veterans. And that's the key right there. We need to protect our veterans. When veterans are being fired, they say laid off, but they're not being laid off. They're being fired, terminated from jobs, from federal jobs. And who's doing that? This president that we now have, he said one thing, but do something else. You see, because as the Native Americans used to say, we talk with a forked tongue. Well, a forked tongue meaning, if you look at a fork, you see the different things come piercing out of it. Well, that's what that is. And you can take them and twist them in different directions. Well, the thing is, our veterans today, are being, like I said, terminated. They're losing their job. When they lose their job, what happens with their mortgage? What happens with their child education? College is so important today. College is so expensive today. And a veteran lose their job and then I can't afford to pay for their child to go to school. They lose their home. What happens? A lot of veterans commit suicide because of things like that. But you don't hear about it, until you look at the statistics that how veterans are committing suicide. And then you look at the background of why they committed suicide. That's the difference. Because you have to look at why a veteran is committed suicide. It's not always because they came back from war or they came back from fighting overseas or something like that. A lot of times it's because something's happening right here in this country that's causing them to commit suicide. When a veteran have a home and a family and now they cannot afford to keep up the home, they're losing their home, that affects a family, especially a military person that have PTSD already. It is something that's worth looking at. And I say to all our veterans out there, we have to look out for each other. If you know someone in those circumstances, get them the help that they need. I implore that upon you today, because again, this is why we're talking about veteran, and the name of the show, Veteran Care Matters, because we care about our veterans. We talk about them the fourth Monday of every month at 2:00. We try to give you information that will help our veterans along the way, because that is something that we all need. Sometimes we just need a hand. We don't need a hand out. We just need a hand up. And a hand up is a way of our veterans getting the help that they need.
Okay, and Calvin, this was really a great show. You gave out so much good information. And again, because the show was getting ready to come to an end. So why don't you give out that number again, the suicide number. And don't feel shy. Express yourself. Express yourself to someone. Don't stay all up in your head. Once you talk sometimes and you hear what you're saying, you'll start to feel better.
Yes, and suicide thoughts. If you have suicide thoughts, it's the number to call. 800-273-8255. Again, that's 800-273-8255. And the hotline number is 988 and press 1 for veteran. And if all else fail, dial 911 and let them know that you are a veteran and they will get you to the crisis hotline for veterans. That is, Renee, I have to say, I thank you so much for pitching in today as my co-host. You did an excellent job. You are welcome here any fourth Monday of the month at 2:00. I appreciate you. I love you on national radio. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Okay. And again, Veteran Cares Matter. And we thank Awesome Radio, okay, of thinking about our veterans out there and that the importance of having a show. So the Awesome Radio Network, just in case, you can find us not only on Facebook, but where else, Calvin? WECU 1570 AM, 107.5 FM, and that's being coming out of Winterville, Greenville.
And WNOS 1450 AM, 102.3 FM out of New Bern. That's our new location. And that's a big, large population over there. And WYLTLP 100.3 FM out of Rocky Mountain, North Carolina. And WBISLP 106.9 FM Espanol. And again, that's out of Winterville. And we will see you the fourth Monday next month. Have a blessed holiday and family day. We don't no longer call it Thanksgiving. We call it Family Day.
You're listening to Awesome Radio, WEC.